line up for you all tonight. This should be really interesting. It will be fast-paced, it will be exciting, and I won't spoil the fun here, standing up here and introducing everyone. So without further ado, we have our first Ignite session presenter, Scott Pobiner.
So no notes because I have one hand. So, okay. Oh, there we go. So tonight I want to talk about the Circus Resinova, the great innovation game. So whenever we send a tweet, whenever we buy a new product, whenever we see a new product, we go out, we wait online, we buy that product, and then we argue about why we bought that product, what it's interesting. Essentially, what we find is that there's a lot of discussion involved in innovation. But one of the interesting things is that when somebody presents a new product, what they actually present is talk. They present the ideas behind that innovation, but also they use the word innovation an awful lot. But that's slightly different from what the word innovation actually means. Innovation is anything that is anything that is perceived as new by a member of a social system. And so you can break down to a series of different parts. Innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority. We've heard of these, and laggards take a little while to come around, but eventually they do. And one of the important things that I think about innovation, what makes me so excited, is that I'm getting more than 15 seconds. But I'll try to keep moving anyways. So what makes me so excited about innovation is that, in fact, when we start to engage it in a meaningful way, we find there's much more to innovation that we can use than just the word innovation. We can actually start, this is taking an awfully long whoa. So we can actually start going to bars. We find that, in fact, a contemporary innovation, the contemporary world of innovation, innovation adoption, has more to do with the people who are adopting it than the innovators themselves. It has more to do with every category after the 2.5% of the people who are actually innovators. Because right now we have an environment where when a product is introduced, there is a groundswell of ideas about activity, of comments, even before that product is introduced. We have a group of people, much like many of the people who are here, who are constantly discussing what they think about something new. The problem is that now, instead of an organized presentation of products and systems, we're sort of being encumbered by a lot of discourse, a lot of anger, and sometimes a lot of opportunity. But it's being harder to tell sort of who's playing this game. We have the blogosphere. This is my representation of the blogosphere. But it actually is this incredibly powerful tool. Some blogs have actually become more established, making room for new narratives, new storytellers. We have commenters. What I find amazing about innovation, actually, is that underneath every story, in every blog, there's this group of people who actually talk about products and actually have an ongoing discussion. And so what innovation adoption has actually become, instead of being an individual product presentation, it's a series of stories and narratives that are being told over time, iterated and argued upon. So one thing I want to sort of ponder is Siri. So we have a new product that was introduced not long ago. It was introduced by Apple, but in fact it was created by SRI. It was a DARPA-funded project. It was around for a while, but now that it's been integrated with the iPhone, we've seen some really interesting stories. People have been developing hacked versions of it, and so now your Roomba loves Siri. TiVo is lassoed by Siri. You can get hockey scores, and you can tweet with Siri. All the things that actually weren't actually presented as part of the product. It was the adopters who actually started to say, what can we do with this product once it's in our hands? And that discourse, that narrative has started to develop in a really meaningful way where the adopters have become innovators. We also find some interesting problems associated with Siri. The presumption that Siri has political values. The presumption that there's some sort of political discourse happening built into the system is actually more about the stories that the adopters are telling. The stories that people are telling about this innovation. And so Siri has actually become sort of an anthropomorphized product. Even before it actually existed, it had a personality. Now Siri, SRI, is actually this development. It comes from the type. the group that created it. But in fact, now we have all sorts of different ideas about it. So Siri's telling jokes now. So verysiri.com is a place that's begun to aggregate it. So now we see not only adopting innovation, we see new innovations and new types of content being delivered based on what people are finding to do with innovation. What's also really interesting, what excites me so much about innovation, is that in little more than a year, Siri has gone from a product that didn't exist in Apple, but was already being discussed by Robert Scoble, to a product that has already broken promises only a couple months after it was actually introduced. We actually start seeing that this is becoming a more meaningful chart now that people have adopted it. We introduced Siri. We had a series of early adopters who discussed it, who talked about it, who were thinking about it. We had an early majority start to innovate with it. And then we have this late majority, this group of people, who actually started to discuss it and talk about these things. And so the people at the end, waiting to make sure Siri really isn't trying to kill anybody, is actually means that we're bringing laggards into the innovation adoption process. People who never actually participated in innovation are actually becoming engaged in this idea of how do we actually participate in the production of things that we buy. And so it's a really interesting and amazing time, and this is being driven, in my opinion, it's being driven primarily by the people who are talking about it. We have this incredible global community that really didn't exist before. So the word innovation actually is gaining meaning. We're actually also seeing that in this great game that we're playing, this Circus Resonova, the circus of the new thing, we're seeing that people are keeping score. Apple's billion downloads leads to 100 million downloads leads to stock price, leads to new value being created. And so actually what's very interesting is that these scores that are being kept about ratings is actually feeding back and changing and creating value for the companies that produce innovations. What excites me so much about this idea is that when we start to see information flow back from adopters, we start to see innovation happen, we start to see that there's an interesting cycle. And so I guess the statement that I want to make, the point I want to make is that if we understand innovation as something that's different from design, then we can understand the relationship that both play when we talk about them as different. They gain more value from being discussed separately, but actually, when we talk about them as synonymously, they both lose meaning. And so that's the sort of last point that I want to make. That when we start to accept the fact that our actions are being recorded when we discuss this, but actually take advantage of it, there's a whole new opportunity for what we're doing. So with that in mind, thank you very much.